Okay guys, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with me in the shop and working on some old junky electronics, trying to restore them to what was once their former day. And today we are going to start on this Philco 19-inch briefcase. Now, I did a first look video on this where we tested the picture tube, but in case you didn't see that, this picture tube, which is a 19 ABP4 110 degree angle picture tube from back in the late 50s, early 60s, test very well, considering a lot of those short neck tubes like this and these skinny sets didn't fare so well and were known for going out. The other thing is, I don't know what model number this is. The only thing I do know is that it was manufactured in September of 1961. I have not been able to identify the chassis, although I think I have. I now have both the SAMs and the original Philco service for chassis 12J27. And you can see a picture of it right there. Okay, and then there's the chassis. This was for the I believe 1961 service data. So if this is not exact, it'll be very, very close. So what have I done to it so far? Well, I've removed the back, and I have all the tubes laid out here, some of which were original and some which are not. The originals would have looked like this horizontal output tube. It would have been a Philco Cool Chassis TV tube. There's still a few of them in here, just like this. And I don't really understand the concept on these tubes. I know that supposedly they will conduct at 450 milliamps. And what's interesting about that is normally a series strung set is a 650 milliamp setup, as well as this picture tube is a 650 milliamp. So conducting at 450 milliamps is what, 69 point something. All right, so round up to 70%. This tube can operate on 70% of the current that a tube that's designed for 650 milliamps would. So I guess the theory is that it'll operate and conduct on less juice, basically, and therefore it will run cooler in a tighter, compact space. That's the theory anyway, or that's how it's been explained to me. I'm not real sure how it works, but yeah, so what I'll be doing is testing all those tubes. I do have replacements, I believe, for every one of those tubes. The other thing I did was I pulled that old, it's an old ratty, fusible resistor. This is still good, believe it or not. I know it looks pretty ratty. The sand on it is fallen off, but the internal mechanism that actually does the work is still good. So what I did was I just got out my old Corona dope and gave it a good covering. Okay, so it's sealed up now. It should be a while before it falls apart any further. And then I may come back and brush on some electrical tape just to kind of seal it even more. And then I'll reinstall it and continue to use it. These are not made anymore in this configuration. Good ones or new ones look kind of like this. And they're kind of hard to come by. I have a few others in my stash, so saving this one and continuing to use it's a good thing. Now you can always cobble together a fuse and a resistor in series and really create the same thing. But I figure since this is still operational, why not use it? Okay. So I've disconnected the high voltage. I've disconnected the CRT connection, and then I've disconnected the yoke connection. In preparation for what I'm going to do is go ahead and remove the face of the CRT safety bezel. We're going to disconnect the chassis. We're going to take the tube out, and that'll all happen. It'll all shoot out the front. And then there's a few bolts around the sides and a few underneath here that will remove this outer shell, basically, that is colored in this ugly gold. And then we'll be left with basically a picture frame chassis. And of course we'll be able to get a look just down underneath there. Back up underneath is where all the electrolytics and a few other components reside that I'll be more than likely changing. Probably all of them, just to make sure that the power supply is in good health. Okay, so really excited to have this Philco service guide. You can see it's hole punched. This is the kind of data and information that would be sent to an authorized Philco dealer to have in their shop. There are other Philco service guides. They did produce these really cool little pocket guides, which are basically the same thing. I don't have the pocket guide, but this would be what the guy in the truck, right, that would come to your home and do service. Basically, he could have this little booklet with him, and it contains schematics, part listings, things of that nature. I don't think it has a lot of alignment information because I think they would assume that the alignment process would be done in a shop. But it does have a lot of parts. It also has the price. So maybe that that would assist them in making an estimate in the field as to how much the repairs would cost. But this book here is very in-depth. Just a table of contents, but it's basically got 4 parts: general information and alignment, tuner information, chassis schematic diagrams, base layouts, and chassis parts, and then the cabinet parts information, and then some miscellaneous, basically how to disassemble the set. So as you go through here, there's a great picture of the chassis. And as you can see, it's definitely why I think I've got the right service information. All the key components look exactly like this photograph. And then section 1 is general information, just basically how to operate the user controls, okay, and where they're at. Horizontal oscillator adjustment. Then it gets into alignment, okay, for both tuners. All right, they show pictures of all the different tuners and the waveforms you should see on your scope. Very detailed instructions on each section of the set that can be aligned. And same type of information, but plus more photos than basically your SAMs would have. And it gives a schematic. This is the VHF tuner schematic. I thought well, maybe it's not in this section. Anyway, here's your waveform patterns, more specific photographs as to what that would look like in the different sections and the different connection points. Oh, this is the tuner schematic actually, and that is just the VHF tuner. Even has pictures of the wafers that are inside. So all very detailed, very detailed. Here's a page that I'm interested in. Here's a picture of the UHF tuner, which I have right here. It is very detailed, how all the parts go together and how they operate. This is basically just a continuous capacitor, much like a radio. You just keep tuning till you get on the station. It doesn't clunk like a VHF tuner with specific channel numbers on it. This is just a variable capacitor like you'd find in a radio that goes from channel 18 to, what was it, 88 on the ultra high frequency band. Then there's a page just dedicated to tuner parts. Then the meat and potatoes is the schematic for the whole set, or for the main chassis. Alright. We'll be looking at this more as we go. But how it's labeled is very different than you would find in a SAMS. They have these great pictures. This happens to be the IF. They call it the VIFS Perma circuit panel, which is basically that circuit board that's underneath the shield and lives right there. What I find interesting is this thing is labeled just like a map. So when they give you lug, all these L's are lugs, which are basically these things right here that stick up. That's obviously labeled vertical linearity. All the lugs and what they are identified. Okay. And then there's the deflection circuit panel. And it's pointing to various parts that if you come over here on the parts list, it'll say what it is. Okay. And then it also gives a location. So you use it just like a map. So maybe like A7, or actually that's probably a bad example. You could go A20. Alright, just go to A and go down to 20, and that's where the parts are. So, you know, here's a view, another view of the IF board. Here's another view of this board, which contains the horizontal and vertical circuits. They call it the deflection perma circuit panel. Then here's a picture of the inside of the set that we're going to be exposed to after the picture tube's taken out, and that's where, this is where all your electrolytic capacitors reside. I think there's 5 or 6 caps in there. Then there's a picture along the top of a few other few other items that are in the circuit there is your diodes for your power supply doubler, and then vertical, and then all the controls. So basically they're just showing you a picture of what's up here. This is a choke, and this is the vertical output transformer right there. So anyway, what I find interesting is, if you get on through here, it identifies exactly what the capacitor is. So let's say this 0.05 at 50 volts. You can find out where it's at on the circuit. The only thing it doesn't say is that it does say in the SAMs it gives a voltage rating. And really the only way I can see that you can find the voltage rating, and even some cases like this point, where was I at? 0.033. It doesn't say what voltage is. So I'm assuming that there's probably some verbiage in here somewhere that says, unless noted on the schematic, it's assumed 600 volts, something to that nature. I don't know. That's an electrolytic. It shows it's supposed to be 50 volts. I noticed a few capacitors on the schematic. If it appeared to be different than 600 volts, if it was a paper cap or something of that nature, they do put the voltage rating on it. But yeah, very, very detailed information. Kind of cool. Then cabinet parts. So if you needed to order cabinet part, no problem. You just go to your Philco connection and order up the parts. Readily available back then. Then there's the miscellaneous, the chassis and CRT removal for the 19-inch, and then there was a 17-inch version. Then also a diagram of this antenna unit, which I'm interested in because I'd like to try to replace that. And then also at that time they had a remote control, a very crude remote control. It was a pneumatic manual remote control. Basically, you had an air bulb with a tubing, and forced air came in and mechanically clicked and would change your channel. I don't have that option, obviously. I do know that there's some guys out there. I've heard them talking about it on Video Karma, but it's basically an air-impelled system, much like the air retracts I have on my model airplanes. Anyway, so that's really cool. Glad to have that. Do have the knob soaking in, well, it's basically simple green. This is the product I use. This is a little bit different version. It's called Mean Green. All right, same thing, biodegradable, and this is concentrated. So I just mix up a batch of water and a little bit of that concentrate. I soak. These have been soaking for a while now. And it gets them really good and clean. Really like that. Now you got to be careful with this. You can see this channel knob had some sort of a finish over the top of it, and then those numbers have some type of, well, I don't know if that's paint or what that is, but it's indented, but there is some type of paint or ink that's in there, and if you soak this too long, it can take that ink out. Now your numbers will still be there, but you just can't see them. Same thing with this knob, contrast and on and off. So I can clean these by hand with simple green, and they'll come out just fantastic. Okay. So, next steps. I'll test the tubes. If I find anything interesting about that, I'll give you a recap. That's pretty boring to watch. And then we'll get after tackling this chassis, or this cabinet and chassis combination, and get that chassis out of there and get a really good look at the set. Okay guys, I'm interrupting the video on the Philco briefcase because a box arrived today, and I'll spare you the suspense of letting you know what it is. It is a CRT that I got off of eBay, which I don't really like to buy CRTs off of eBay because of exactly what we're looking at. This is obviously not a box that a CRT was originally shipped in, but hopefully it'll be okay. I didn't pay a lot for it, which is good. It was offered on eBay cheaply to begin with. I made an offer and it was accepted, and so now it's mine, and shipping was reasonable. What is it? Well, it's a 19 ABP picture tube that goes into the Philco briefcase, as well as it will work in a town and country. It's the 110 degree deflection tube angle, as well as a 2.35 heater voltage. It's supposed to be good. We'll find that out because we'll do a test on it, but right now I want to do an unboxing just in case it's busted and I can get my money back. I'm really concerned that when it showed up it had this hole busted in it, but there's also some foam down there that looks a lot like a cooler. So let me put you in the stand, we'll open this up. 19 ABP4. Like I said, goes into the briefcase. It'll go into, well, it'll go into a town and country, of which I have both those sets. Both those sets have good CRTs, but this will definitely be a backup, or if I find in the future one of those sets, I'll have a CRT that would work. That's the only thing I'm missing. So this will not work in a Predicta. Okay, Predicta's had 17-inch CRTs and 21-inch CRTs. So we've got some styrofoam. Well, looks like the neck's not broke. It's jammed in there pretty good. A lot of styrofoam. Definitely not the best way to ship a CRT, but looks like it might have arrived. Okay. Appear to be broke, but the telltale sign will be to get it out of here and get the CRT tester on it and actually see if it's a good tube. 2.68, 450 milliamp. Okay, all right, so that goes, I was talking earlier about the picture tubes in the briefcase, I guess in the town and country as well, about cool, what do you call them, the cool tubes, or cool chassis tubes, or whatever. I guess these were designed for 450 milliamp. I mistakenly said they were 650, but yeah, It's 450 milliamp. So that makes sense in a series strung set. Alright, clears that up. I'm sure someone will comment and go, you dumbass. Those tubes were 450 as well. Picture tubes. Okay, let me get it out of here, get this box put away, and let's test this thing. Okay, I got this 19 ABP4 up on the bench with the B&K 465. And I've got it set at 2.68. And before anybody kills me in the comments about what I said earlier in the video about these cool chassis tubes that are 450 milliamps, and I mistakenly said that the tube in the briefcase was a 650 milliamp heater. This is a 450 milliamp. So that makes more sense to me that it's a series strung set. All the tubes are 450 milliamps. And right there, yeah, we've got a heater glow. So, you know, with this thing out of a set, you can really get a good look at really how short that picture tube neck is and how thin this whole tube is that goes in these sets. And again, it's a 19-inch screen, won't work in a Predicta. Same concept, same deflection angle, all that, except the Predicta swivel heads use 17s and 21-inch screens, so this will not work in a Predicta. So let's go ahead and look for shorts. No shorts. And emissions. Wow. That's great. Let's hit the live test. Live test was dropping pretty quick there, but wow. This is testing really, really good as far as emissions go. I don't think either one of my CRTs that the one in my Town and Country or the briefcase we're working on here tested that high. So let's go to cutoff. Get on the cutoff line. Yeah, that's about right. And we're at like 46, 47. 19 ABP4. Somewhere between 28 and 72 on G1 volts is good for cutoff. So yeah, this tube is testing fantastic. Definitely will enjoy having this in my stash. Clean this up a little bit, put it away. But just know I have one in my back pocket, and these are hard to find, and I did not pay a lot of money for this. Less than $50. So to have a tube that tests, boy, easy for me to say, a tube that tests this well from this vintage for less than $50 is almost impossible to do. Now, if it was a 17-inch or a 21-inch that would go into a Predicta, nah, I wouldn't be able to buy it that cheap. But this thankfully made it through the mail, and it got here safely, and it tests great. Glad to have this. Okay, let's move on more to the briefcase. All right, we're going in. Time to disassemble. Okay. So, it's like a Phillips screw here on the bezel. I'm filming this because I don't think it's going to take very long to show you guys how really quick you can get one of these sets apart. Now these are just a couple of Phillips screws to the plastic bezel. There should be a couple down here, and there are. And after I get these out, this whole front bezel safety glass should come off. These are larger than the ones on the side. And let's do this. I think you guys can see that. Now, tilt it up. Okay, so I think we're going to have to lay it down. Feels like it's caught up. Nope. I think it just came out. Okay. I'll put that aside for a second. And you can see some parts. I think this is from the VHF tuner, and this is from the high voltage cage. And there's the CRT is held into this plastic by some clips, as well as the safety glass. But I'm not gonna worry about that right now. But I do want to get this CRT out, and eventually we'll repaint this whole front bezel, because I do believe this has been repainted. This has been taken out. It doesn't look like it was masked very well, and there's a lot of scratches on this that needs to be buffed on, but overall this is not in bad shape, just kind of a little bit dirty. So let me put this aside. All right. And let's put the main chassis back up here. And so now to get the outer shell off. Now I do know that the speaker will still be connected. You may have to disconnect that, but looks like this bolt or screw. This part of the outer shell. These two, there's one on the top. I think there's one on the lower right. No, there's one on the right, same place. Okay. All right. Now these are main chassis bolts on the bottom, and I do remember this from the Town and Country set. These are actually bigger. That actually is not going to work, because this is metric. I need standard. Just one size up. They're 5/16. Okay. There are, looks like 5 of these. Let me get these out. I see one more over here that's holding this frame on. That's the standard 1/4 inch. Okay, so those are out. Let me 1/4 inch back on. Another wafer just fell out. Not sure what that's about. This right here appears to connect the frame. Okay. Like these are holding it on as well. Yep. So now it appears that the only thing three right here. Actually more holding this on than I thought. Actually, maybe just one. Okay. Okay, let me mess with that a little bit more. I don't even know if you guys can see that. Yeah, you can. Let me mess with this a little bit more. It appears I have something here. Could have to do with this antenna. Let me get that disconnected, and then you can see that the frame is about to come out. So once I get it out, we'll take a look, okay? Okay, that was a little more difficult to get out than I remember the Town and Country set coming out of the outer casing chassis. You can get a look at now. But it's nothing more than a metal frame that goes all the way around the set. This antenna section is still attached. Okay, but you can get a look at, what the outside frame looks like. Speaker does have to come off. It is still attached to the chassis. Definitely we'll put some protection over that in case that, I'm moving it around a lot. Don't want to poke a hole in it because the speaker looks pretty good. There's some dents here. We'll address that when it comes time to refinish this cabinet. All right, a little bit of rust there, but otherwise not too bad. Some rust there. This whole thing will be painted anyway, so we'll set that aside for now and work on that when it's time to clean that up. Now you can get a really good look at the picture frame, what I call the picture frame chassis. And then this is the area where the picture tube sets that I was referring to earlier, where all the electrolytics are. There's a couple of paper capacitors in there and a few resistors. I believe this is the main filter. This is a 4-section cap. And I believe this is a 3-section cap. So basically 8 electrolytics in this area. And then now you can get a different angle and look at the circuit boards. And this circuit board, much like TVs of this time period, there's just not a lot of access to the bottom of it. So ultimately, to deal with the components on the other side, you mainly have to pull that board to get at it. This one, I think, is a little bit easier. But I may end up pulling that one completely off too, just to give it a good scrub, give it a good cleaning. All of this needs a good cleaning. There you can see that network. Really nice touch by Philco to put the values of the component on the other side. That is the horizontal oscillator. We'll definitely be rebuilding that. Alright, so there's a good look of that side. There's not many other components on this side. Other than that, down in this area here. We can come back to this area. One thing I wanted to do, let's see if we can get a peek. See if we can get a peek at the flyback. Let's see if we can get this little tag out of there. Caution and warning. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. Oh, there's a tab here. That's interesting. Not sure why there'd be a tab there other than the... Let me work on this a little bit more and see if I can come back and get that open. I don't know if I can do that with one hand. Okay, it's interesting that they had some tabs as well as one screw on here. Some tabs here that you had to manipulate in order to open this high voltage cage. I guess I really didn't want you getting in there. Let's see if I can get some light down in here. I didn't get a good look at that horizontal output transformer. It's in really good shape. As far as the wax go, it's got a couple cracks in it, but otherwise, there's a high voltage rectifier tube, and I can see that it's a original Philco cool chassis tube. So yeah, high voltage cage is pretty good shape. I just need to do a little dusting overall on the set. So hold your ears, cover your ears. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I did not realize the compressor was going to fire up right when I fired some air at this thing. Got it dusted out pretty good, and you can get a really good sense for what this chassis looks like. Couple of things. Number one, this was, I don't think it's going to focus, the camera's going to focus for you. But one thing that came flying out was this little transistor. Have no idea where this little guy came from. It must have been from a repair shop back in the day. somehow this little guy ended up in this set when it was in for tube changes or whatever. But one thing I finally have resolution on, and I knew it had to be here somewhere, but that's really hard to see. But that is, because Philco always did this, they always stamped their chassis. That is 12J27U. Okay? So, as I suspected, it's a 12J27U chassis. This was built in 1961. So I still don't know the model number. I looked through that information. There were several different model numbers that had the UHF option during that year. But this chassis was pretty much the main chassis for that whole model year on the briefcase. So we know it's that, which is good. So what to do now? Well, I think the first thing I'm going to do is shore up all the work here, all the electrolytics that I'm going to change. Of course, I'll test all these, but more than likely we'll be just changing everything down here. And then once I get to that point, I'll attack this board first, and then that board, and it should be pretty straightforward. Definitely will give all the pots, okay, all the pots will get and the tuner, a good deoxit cleaning. And yeah, should be a fun project. So when I come back, I'll give you an update on where I'm at on the Philco briefcase. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys, in my shop, working on some old junky TVs. Appreciate you being here. Later.